I mentioned in my last video that I was fairly close to finishing the Arteza sketchbook that I had been working out of, and I'm really happy to say that that is all done now. I completely finished that sketchbook, and of course, I'll be doing a tour of it in the next couple of weeks here, but I've finally been able to work on the sketchbook that I bound for myself, which I've been really looking forward to. Technically, I could have started this sketchbook at any point in time, but I really don't like having a bunch that are in progress at one point in time because bouncing back and forth between them, it just takes so much longer to finish one individual, and there's a lot of different kinds of papers that I like to try, so I have a bunch of sketchbooks set aside that I've just been wanting to like crack open and paint inside of and draw inside of, etc. But I've just been kind of trying to do one at a time. That's the pace I like to give myself because it's very manageable. It's very not overwhelming, the overwhelming feeling of being like, I have so many sketchbooks I'm working on right now. So I was really excited to try this one out because I bound it for myself and I really like it. The cover is so pretty, so it just like every time I saw it I was so excited to work in it. If you're curious, I do have a video of me putting it together, but the paper I'm actually using for the sketchbook that I put in the sketchbook is Canson XL watercolor paper. I've used it here and there, and for like the price of this paper, it's such nice paper for watercolors. It's just like, it holds a lot, you can lift watercolors on it. It's just very nice paper considering how cheap it is. Because I know a lot of people go for like the really big expensive brands like Arches and stuff where it's a lot of money for a piece of paper, but I personally really like the Canson XL watercolor paper. I find it to be very nice for watercolors, and I haven't tried a huge variety of papers in the past, but I really do like their watercolor paper. So that is what is in this sketchbook, and if you don't know what I'm painting, it is Godoka from Puelli Magi Madoka Magica, which is a mouthful, but Madoka Magica is one of my favorite animes, probably in my top 5, if not top 3. I really like Madoka Magica. It is such a wonderful story. It's very sad. It's a lot. It's a magical girl anime. It's a lot, but I wanted to paint Godoka from the series because I recently rewatched the series and I was just in the mood to do some fan art from the series because I love all the characters' designs, and this one in particular, this form of this character is just like, it's very visually like a lot, and it's so pretty, and it's an opportunity for me to paint galaxies in like a space design with watercolors, which is always really fun. I don't do it enough considering how fun and easy it is to do, and it's also really fun to splatter white paint on a surface, and that really turns it into like a space looking thing, so that's what I decided to paint. And of course I'm also using my custom palette that's a mixture of M. Graham and Daniel Smith paints. Pretty much ever since I set up this palette, I haven't really touched any other watercolors that I own. Not that I really had like a huge collection of watercolors to begin with, but I haven't touched my student grade Shinhan colors at all. I touched my Gonzai Tombi watercolors like once, but that's because I hadn't used them in so long to begin with, and I just kind of wanted to play with them, but I've been really loving this palette. There's a couple of colors that I think I might end up adding in the future, but it's just such a fun palette, and the jump from the student grade watercolors that I was working with to the professional grade watercolors that I'm working with now, it wasn't like a huge jump, but it's just like, it's enjoyable enough that like I keep learning new things that these watercolors can do, and I keep like learning about these watercolors in of themselves, and it's just such a joy to work with this palette. It makes me so happy to paint with it, and like all the colors are absolutely gorgeous, and I know they're good quality, and they blend wonderfully, and they mix wonderfully, and I'm very happy with my watercolor palette, so it's always a lot of fun to use. I also get a lot of questions when it comes to the brushes that I use for watercolors, and I definitely have a mixture of a bunch of brands, but the ones that I find myself reaching for the most, and what I can say is my favorite line of watercolor brushes, is Princeton's Velvet Touch brushes. They're just like really nice. Brushes are kind of weird for me because I feel like when it comes to watercolors, like the most important thing is the paper, and then the paints, and then the brushes, I guess. Like, you don't want to be working with really crappy, like, the watercolor brushes that come in Crayola watercolor sets where they're just these gross, hard bristles that are going in every which direction, but like you don't necessarily need the most expensive, nicest brushes to work with. I also really like using the Arteza The thin brushes that Arteza offers for detail work, I use those all the time. They come in such a variety of small sizes and they're really nice to use. Especially recently, I've picked up the habit of doing my line work with watercolors. And having such a selection of really fine brushes that can make such tiny, tiny strokes has been such a nice thing to have for my collection. And I personally really like how soft watercolor line work looks. It's kind of a pain in the butt and it takes a really long time. You can see me doing that. That's what I'm doing here. And then I think I added a tiny bit of colored pencil to the line work as well. But for the most part, the line work in this piece was completely done with watercolors. It just looks really soft and you can obviously get a very wide range of colors from doing the line work in watercolors. But like I said, it's just extremely time consuming because you constantly have to go back and forth and pick up color and water it down, and it takes a really long time. But I really like how this piece ended up turning out. My main desire for this piece was just to do something that went across 2 pages. I've been really enjoying using not wire-bound sketchbooks recently. I've done them for my past couple sketchbooks and it's just been such a joy to work with. I talked about it a bit in my ELO sketchbook tour, I think, where it's really nice being able to work across 2 pages and not have to worry about wire binding in the center. So I really like this sketchbook. It's so fun to work on. It's such a nice size sketchbook to work on. So I'm really excited to work on more of the sketchbook and just complete filling it out. I know it'll probably take me a while because I did put a lot of pages in this one, but I'm really excited to keep working in the sketchbook. And as far as this piece goes, the only thing that I would change if I were to do this right now over again is, as far as the background goes, I think I should have used washi tape around the border. That way there would be some kind of white edge, because as far as contrast and tone goes, there's not a lot of contrast going on in this piece and she kind of blends into the background, especially since I decided to use purple in the background, like a pinkish, I used pink. I used pink and purple in the background, but I added a white border around the character to help her pop from the page, and that definitely helped. But I feel like it would have looked a lot better if there was just a crisp white border around just the background, the character broke the background and then just that nice white border. I don't know why I didn't think of doing that, because that's something that I think I do a decent amount of my art, just taping off sections and painting within said taped off section, because I think that does give a very nice look. But I don't know, I guess I just wasn't thinking about it, and when I was done I was like, dang, I wish I did that, but it was already too far gone, so it is what it is. But like I said, I am really happy with how this turned out. Initially, I was doing all the little stars in the background with a white gel pen, and then I was like, no way can I do this, I'm gonna lose my mind. So I got some white ink and I splattered some just ink all over the page. It got on the character, but there weren't many dark tones on her character to begin with, so it wasn't like it was really in the way or anything, but that added a bunch of little stars in the background, and that really ties galaxies together, just having the splatter of stars. So if you're ever painting a galaxy and it doesn't look like a galaxy, I definitely recommend splattering some white paint on there, white ink on there, whatever, because it really ties it together. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.